Good, good morning, everybody. This is the Diallo show, broadcasting straight out of the Q4 studios. Q4 Radio, AM 1680, Q4.org, TuneIn app, iTunes Radio. Today is December 4th in the year of your Lord, 2019. Today is also the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Mark Clark and Chairman Fred Hampton. So, as I've done every day, every year, this will be the third or fourth, I don't know who's counting, but this will be the third or fourth time that I will play the assassination of Fred Hampton documentary. It does have some strong language, listener uh, advisory, but I feel compelled to share this. I would play it every day. I saw that documentary when I was a small child in Kansas City, probably 9 years old, younger, on public television, Channel 19 in Kansas City, Missouri. I don't know what possessed them to play that, but that documentary literally transformed my life. I mean, I was glued to the television. So I'm going to share that. It's one of my favorite. That and Like It Is, um, Malcolm X, two of my favorite documentaries of all time. But anyway, we're going to share that. And it does have some strong language, but hey, we're going to go for it. I mean, if they can kill our great leaders and ancestors in cold blood, I think you can tolerate a little harsh language. Anyway, until we get to that, I just want to talk about a few things before we go to that part of today's show. One of the first things I want to bring up this morning is I'm sure you know. I don't know. I'm sure you know. If I know, y'all know. There's a rap group called the Mingos. Bad and Bougie. Anyway, there's this rap group called the Bad and Bougie, called the Migos, and one of the artists is named Offset, and this young man is married to Cardi B, who is one of the hottest minstrels in the game right now. And I'm done calling these minstrels artists, and I'm just, hey, get mad if you want. Call me a hater. The Grinch of Pan Africanism, whatever. I'm going to call a minstrel a minstrel. We got to start using correct language. Because when archaeologists from the far future excavate this collapsed society, and they pull down our recordings from the electronic ether, they're going to say, at least let us name things. Let's call things what things are. So as a broadcast, I'm going to try to start calling things by their proper names. And I know some of y'all spiritual people, y'all know that words have vibrations, and vibrations impact matter. And some of y'all biblical folks said that a prayer can collapse a mountain or part a sea. So I'm just going to call things what they are. So if you engage in minstralism, I'm going to call you a minstrel. There are some hip hop artists. There are some true MCs. There are even rappers. But there are also the long tradition of the minstrel. And I'm not going to get into, go to the Diallo archives. I've talked about what a minstrel is and the difference between a minstrel and an artist. And you got some artistic minstrels out there, but a minstrel's nonetheless. Anyway, there's a minstrel by the name of Offset, who's of the hip hop group the Migos. One of the first songs I heard from the Migos is Versace. Versace, Versace. Medusa head on my slave like I'm Illuminati. Whatever. So this young man stated that hip hop is black music. That hip hop is black, and if you don't respect that and don't acknowledge that, you should not be engaged in hip hop. And a lot of other young people thought that this was woke, that this was dope, that this was conscious. And I hear a lot of young people celebrating acknowledgement of the fact that hip hop is black culture. And he said, I quote, Don't speak or give game if you don't have it. He said this on Twitter. Let's see if I can find the exact. Okay, here's the exact tweet. Don't make rules on what goes in hip hop when you don't know the history, its pain, music story. It's pain, music story. That's what it says. Music, there's no punctuation or capitalization here. I'm sorry. I was taught to read with certain markers. So forgive me if I stumbled through this. But Offset said, don't make rules on what goes in hip hop when you don't know the story. It's pain, music, story, music. We, the biggest genre in the world, off our struggle and hustle. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Proud of my people. That's all of you mad then sorry, but no sorry. But no sorry. Took a lot of us to get here, but we here with several exclamation points. Hashtag Black Excellence. He goes on to say, sorry, but hip hop is black culture. Don't speak or give game if you don't have black culture. Duh. Also, no punctuation. I don't know. I'm married to an English teacher. She did this to me. But anyway, I've been seeing, especially, one of my I got some little cousins in the hip hop game, but I'm just seeing everybody wilding out like, oh, Offset. And then the image that accompanies this tweet is Offset sitting in a fur coat in front of a table full of luxury watches, Rolexes, and the crocodile green watch bands, and gold and diamond, and he has gold encrusted diamond necklace, and he has a Louis Vuitton purse with some, European painted on it. And I had to insert myself in this discussion as being someone who's been there since the inception of hip hop. My generation is literally called the hip hop generation, and being a long time enthusiast, consumer, participant in hip hop culture, it made me happy to see that black people are having this discussion, but it made me sad to see that black people were dead ass wrong about this discussion. Hip hop is not black culture. I'm sorry to say, hip hop is not black culture. Intrinsically, hip hop is not blanketly, completely black culture. And I know for a fact that many of you don't agree with this. And I had some people when I entered the discussion to tell me that all forms of music originating in America is black music. Gospel, blues, R&B, jazz, rock and roll. It's all black. But there's something we have to understand about culture. There's something we have to understand about products, human-produced products, artifacts, methodologies, techniques. Because I'm finding something as I engage in the world that black people have this delusion about what things are and how to classify things. So when I talk about evolution, they say that's white science. When I talk about atheism, they say that's the white man's ideology. And then when we talk about hip hop, they say, well, that's the black man's art. And that's not how these things work. I am very sorry. Now, music is universal to all people. There has not been a culture that has been excavated, studied, discovered, reviewed that did not have music. Humans tend to engage in certain base level behaviors as they reach a certain level of development. From markets and commerce, to architecture and construction, to arts. They have rituals for mating. They have hierarchies and governing structures. All cultures, universally. Even cultures that are absolute anathema to each other. Humane cultures, inhumane cultures. matrilineal cultures, and patriarchal cultures. Caribbean cultures, tropical cultures, to Arctic Nordic cultures. There are certain things that all humans engage in across the board. Any humans that can be defined as humans or human beings or the human species. Any societies, whether it's small family groups or large metropolitan megacities, there are certain universal elements. And what we use to distinguish whether or not those particular universal manifestations belong to any particular group is how they are applied, what comes from them, and what is put into them. So the way you identify Celtic music, African music, Native American music, the way you identify the various cultural manifestations of music is not just say, hey, this is music, are the cultural assemblies, are the values articulated through that culture. How does the culture speak to the people? How does this culture serve the people? What is culture? Culture are the sets of behaviors, values, viewpoints, ideas that sustain the people, that advance the people, that allow the people to be identified as people. So when you look at Celtic music, Celtic ideology, Celtic values, Celtic myths and folklores, and even Celtic visions for the future are embedded in Celtic music. Same thing with all other forms of music. And that's how you identify it, not just the fact that it came from Celtic regions. So, when you look at black music, you have to say, what goes into that music, what comes out of that music, how does that music serve the interests of the people? Before you can classify it as black. That's just how it works. That's how any anthropologist, any cultural scientist will determine. And origins is just one component of that. Who created it is just one component of it. It's an important component. I'm not discounting, okay, you make this thing. How is it utilized? How is it distributed? Who values, ideologies, viewpoints does it articulate? Who owns and controls it? Those are all also elements of culture. Not just you sat somewhere in a dark room and tinkered and you created something and voila, I have created this. And so there it is mine. That's not how things work. Because you'll notice also that all human creations never generally don't come from one single culture. Meaning that even if you look at European culture, you'll see that European culture is an amalgam of several different cultures. Even Africans, look at the African influence on Greece and Rome. Look at the Arab and Asian influence, everything from Asian silks and spices to Arab numbers and lettering and mathematical formulas. There are all inputs that come from various cultures that come to fuse into what has come after European culture. The same thing with hip hop. If you go back to the earlier stages of hip hop, you'll see that there are a lot of Asian influences like bonsai. We used to wear those a lot of disco, rock and roll, punk music, and a lot of the equipment, the turntables, the microphones, the PA systems. Hell, even the poverty and the projects that white men created. The hardship and oppression that the white man created is all part of the recipe for hip hop. But when I look at hip hop and I say, is Migos black hip hop? What about Migos music is African or even black? That serves the interests, represents the values or ideas of black people. Their first breakout hit that I know of is Versace. Versace. Versace, Versace. What about Versace is black? He says, Versace, Versace, Medusa head on me like I'm Illuminati. That's the first verse after the chorus. Versace, Versace, Medusa head on me like I'm Illuminati. This is a gated community. Please get the F off the property. Rap must be changing because I'm at the top and ain't no one on top of me. Niggas be waiting for a verse, but man, that's not what a swap to me. Drowning in compliments, pool in the backyard, and look like a metropolis. I'm looking for something that reflects black. Boy, Versace, Versace. We stay at the mansion when we in Miami. The pillows, Versace. The sheets, Versace. I just won a Grammy. I've been so quiet. I got the world like, who the F is planning? Well, let's just look. Well, anyway, you can go look up the lyrics of the song. They talk about gold. The values in hip hop are individualist, materialist, capitalist, misogynist. I mean, in the average hip hop song, on the average radio commercial hit. So you do have black hip hop or African hip hop. You have European hip hop. And now you even have Western hip hop. Hip hop is not African. Hip hop has been weaponized against African people. So can it still be defined as African? Africans started agriculture, but is there African, if you look at the agriculture of the United States, agriculture that destroys ecosystems, agriculture that requires the input of fossil fuel technologies, that requires the input of chemical fertilizers and chemical insecticides that are destroying the soil, that pollute the water, that contaminate the air. So are the Europeans, when they engage in agriculture, engaged in African culture? So I wish it was as simple as, hey, black people made this, it's black, it's ours, we claim it. I don't claim that. I don't want no parts of that. And I know that that does not reflect anything that is fruitful to African people. Anything that starves you, drains you, degrades you is not your culture. Anything that advances the interest of your oppressors and your enemies is not your culture. And not to mention the video. If you look at the Versace video, there are white girls with blonde hair grinding all up on these minstrels with gold teeth looking like jigaboo bugaboos all over. And they want to turn around and tell us about what's black. How can you claim when you don't have the interests, the values, you don't reflect the history? Here we are on the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Fred Hampton. And black people in the city of Chicago and across this country have been on a downward spiral since COINTELPRO destroyed our revolutionary movements. And since we've had so many bug dancing, bootlicking Uncle Tom sellouts that have embraced the agenda of everything from integration to black degradation. But you want to tell me that hip hop is black? I wish it was true. I wish I could high five Offset with his hands full of blood diamonds. These rappers wearing the finest Italian, French, European high fashion, blood diamonds, blood gold, blood platinum, raped you by stolen by the colonial powers and turns into empty symbols of wealth, bragging about how much money they got, how many hoes they pimp, how many black people they kill or are willing to kill to preserve or to get more money or to preserve their riches. And then I'm supposed to stand up in front of white people and say, no, this is ours? Hell no. Dr. John Henry Clark said, anything that is not an instrument of your liberation needs to be thrown in the ash can of history. So if Offset or the rest of the Mingos or the rest of these black minstrels out here want to start, and they love to talk this empty, superficial black pride, hashtag black excellence. Really? And if you go to these concerts, look at the audience. Don't go to the concerts. Go online and look at footage from the concert and look at the crowd and tell me them crowds ain't 80, 90% white. Like KRS-One said, when you go platinum, that doesn't make you the authority. It just means you sold out to the white majority. We already know upwards of 70+% of all hip hop revenues come directly out of white folks. Because white people have always, going all the way back to chattel slavery, white people have always gotten a kick out of seeing black people under the stage lights, up on stage, degrading themselves. Everywhere Europeans have gone and engaged in conquest and have colonized, enslaved, and imposed their will on another people, they've always, besides the rape, the pillage, the oppression, they have always, without exception, had the people they have conquered engage in degrading performance, degrading themselves on stage for the entertainment of the people that conquered them. And that form of entertainment is always when the white people come up with stereotypes or some vision of who or what you are. They want to see you, even if they have to force you to portray the stereotypes that they have imposed on you. They get a sexual, spiritual, and even out-of-body arousal. They love that. And it doesn't even matter when they colonize their own. You look at the British who go and colonize the Scots, and they have these stereotypes of a Scotsman. Even in popular media, they still have these stereotypes. Or when the British colonized the Irish, they had this stereotype of the Irish, the drunken, fighting, belligerent Irish. When the British bang on the French, and they had this idea of the French surrender monkey. And when the French attacked the British, they had this vision of the Cockney Brit. And when they go to China, the Ching Chongs, when they go to Japan, even in the Pacific Islands, they talk about these cannibals in grass skirts with coconut bras doing the hula. Latin America, Native Americans, how piece of pipe, we smoke on peace pipe. So everywhere throughout history where white people have gone to engage in conquest, they want the people they conquered to perform for them in the degrading stereotypes that they want blacks. And there have been people from every single culture that says, I will not be your monkey, I will not be your minstrel, I will not perform and act out or live out the stereotypes that you impose on me. Because Europeans like to create this myth that we're not oppressing people. We're not destroying civilizations. We're bringing light to the lesser beings. And some people from some culture says, no, I will not. I will not dance for you. I will not perform for you. I will not validate your stereotypes. And what are some stereotypes that black people have carried? We oversexed. We have no discipline. We are into trinkets. We like things that are shiny. We're into short-term gratification. Versace, Versace. So if your artistry confirms the stereotypes and the dehumanizing views of your oppressors, and you're performing that on stage or in the movies or anywhere, you're not an artist, you're not a performer, you are a minstrel. And it used to be, when black people were too dignified to do this, or they couldn't find black people to do it, white folks would paint their own faces and get up on stage, Mommy. And then black people got the nerve to be mad. And guess what? The first black performers in the Jim Crow era, even black performers had to wear blackface. A blacker face. Even black performers had to paint their lips on. And the same thing that the Migos and the other artists, their contemporaries do, is the exact same thing. They would get on stage and say, I'm so lazy, boss. I don't like to work, boss. I just wants to sleep all day and sing all night. And then they go into the song. And what do these rappers say? I put hoes on the strip, and I make money off of pimping hoes. I ain't working. And I party all night drinking the all these exotic liquors. I drive foreign cars. I'm impractical AF. So, Offset and all the rest of these, hey, don't speak. You're not black excellence. You're black minstrels. And it's a shame that so many young black people, they come in, they see this as consciousness. They see this as woke commentary and don't engage in any critical analysis. I saw so many black people so proud that one of the most famous premier hip-hop artists in the world is going to say, hey, this is black excellence. No, it's not. And then you remember the debate when Jay-Z made $1 billion, hit a billionaire status, and they were like the first hip-hop billionaire. I promise you, the first hip-hop billionaire never wrote a rap, never got on the stage to swing his change and to grab his nuts and to degrade black women and to promote materialism, consumerism, capitalism to impoverish black people. That wasn't the first. The first hip-hop billionaire was probably a white man of Jewish persuasion, maybe, of Jewish faith. I don't know. Sometimes y'all pretend that Jews are white and then y'all don't. I don't know how y'all deal with Jews. Depending. But I promise you, the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and all down the line, the first 100 people to make $1 billion over hip-hop didn't look nothing like you or me. Sony record execs, maybe some Japanese record executives. And these are the harsh realities. We keep looking at the surface. Get off the surface, y'all. Ain't nothing on the surface but bird poop and soot. We always have to look beneath the surface. You got to have what they had, what we call holistic viewpoint. And quit going for these short-term feel-good ideas. Hip-hop is black, and that's enough for me. And here's another thing. Even if you disagree with everything else I'm saying, here's a universal law. Anything created by the slave is property of the slave master. Any and all things created by the slave are property of the slave master. Get mad if you want, but show me an event in history where it ain't true. And I know we love to sit back and talk about all the great inventions of black people. Not just artistic or musical, but technological. We got whole museums across this country of great black inventors. Right? But we ain't got no industry across this country. There's an article that came out, everybody hooping and hollering and saying there are more churches and mosques than factories in Africa. We talk about Garrett Morgan. We talk about our innovations on the internal combustion engines and lubricating system for rail cars to the stoplight, traffic light. Everything from the super soaker to the cell phone. Black people have made magnificent contributions. But when it gets industrialized, when it gets commercialized, we kick to the curb. Hell, the weed industry. Black people been flipping and tricking and hustling weed since the jazz era. Way back in Jim Crow, we was hustling weed. But when it becomes legalized and industrialized and commercialized, here we are. Got our great politicians begging, black people are locked out of the industry. Of course we're locked out of the industry. 20 years ago, we locked out of computers, and we keep playing catch up. It's a goddamn disgrace. But the reality is, until we become liberated, it doesn't matter what we make. Our great-great-grandchildren are going to be sitting here protesting being locked out of whatever new industry. Planetary colonization, interstellar space travel, whatever that's the new industry to come in the next 100 years, we still going to be protesting. If we don't get liberated, it doesn't matter what we invent. They're going to take it. Because we don't have the infrastructure, the institutions, the governance, the military, the power, or more importantly than anything else, the ideology and the consciousness and awareness to hold on to what we create, to control, direct, and sustain what we create. Anything that is created by the slave automatically becomes property of the master. We picked all that cotton and we didn't have no cotton industry. You're nothing more than a tool, a beast of burden. Chattel. They told us that, and they were like, oh, okay, now you're a citizen. Even though we got a different title, and instead of being chattel property, we're now U.S. citizens, how come the outcome is the same? Whatever we create becomes their profit, their ownership, their control. But we get to sit around and say, well, we made it. Look what we did. They took that from us. They took jazz. They took rock and roll. They taking hip hop. Eminem is not the greatest. All we can do is sit in corners and complain about what we did. That's called historical contributionism. Amos Wilson said we need to get over historical contributionism. Historical contributionism is when people engage in the fallacy to believe that their past or even current contributions will win them favor with their enemies and oppressors. I could walk out this door tomorrow and invent the greatest thing that saves Western civilization. Or I could join the military and take up arms and put an end to the war on terror and help America win. And my people are still going to suffer. And they don't give a damn if a black man makes a great contribution to American society, American capitalism, American science. It doesn't matter. Western science, it does not matter. So, all that to say, shut up, Offset. Shut your ass up. You're embarrassing yourself sitting here talking about black excellence while you got blood diamonds around your neck, rapping about Versace with Louis Vuitton and Gucci, racist ass companies. Some of these companies were founded by Nazis and white overt racists. And then I got to go and talk to young people, young brothers and sisters, and tell them this is not a win for y'all. But whatever. I'm getting sick of that black hip hop is black debate. Because if it was really ours, we wouldn't have to debate it. We wouldn't have to hashtag it. It would be understood. Go look at that Versace video and show me something that enhances, sustains, validates, uplifts African people. Go look at the Versace video or Bad and Bougie video. But I don't know. Maybe y'all. And now, you know, when Reagan proposed trickle-down economics, black people said we weren't with trickle-down economics. But then after black people with a little money started making little schools and giving us little charitable this and that, we all of a sudden embraced trickle-down economics. But I digress. I'm running out of time. The police superintendent was fired. Moving on. Eddie Johnson. Man, let me tell you something. Y'all don't understand the depth. The police superintendent, the chief of police, and the Chicago Police Department, which is very apropos, seeing that today is the 50th anniversary of the Chicago Police Department assassination, planned, deliberate assassination of Chairman Fred Hampton. That this old bootlicking, buck dancing, Uncle Tom sellout, Eddie Johnson, who was put in that position to make that $200 something thousand a year, that good job. Eddie Johnson, when he came into office, when he was a token, he knows he was a token. When Rahm Emanuel appointed him to that position, he said, I've been on the police force for 30 years, a loyal and hardworking police officer, and I've seen no evidence of racism, discrimination, or police brutality against the black community. That's what Eddie Johnson said. And from that moment on, I knew he played it so. And so Eddie Johnson went on to preside over a racist, corrupt, bloodthirsty police department, making no significant reforms, validating, supporting the Fraternal Order of Police. He did everything he was supposed to do. Every morning he got up, shined his tap shoes, and got out there and tap danced for the white folks. And I mean, I'm a little perturbed. Because if Eddie can't make it, none of you Uncle Toms can make it. But no Uncle Tom ever learns from the demise of another Uncle Tom. Because there are successful Uncle Toms, I guess. And so all Uncle Toms, they look at Eddie, but they could also look at an Obama, who was a very successful Uncle Tom, who served the interests of white folks and has been well rewarded and well loved by the people. But Rahm Emanuel, he's a shrewd dude. Rahm Emanuel was like, the black folks are mad. Right? The black folks are pissed off. Police are torturing black folks. Police are murdering unarmed black kids. Police are engaged in drug dealing and even engaged in human. Police are engaged in all the crimes and repression and doing all the things that the police generally do. And the black people are fed up. But I can't have no riot and uprising. They're already marching. And you remember those black youth went down to what was it, 4 years ago, went down to the Miracle Mile on Black Friday and shut down all commerce. They used their bodies to block the doors so that these Versace, so that these other people can't go buy their Versace. A very, very intelligent party. Hit them in the pockets. Said, we're going to shut down. Ain't nobody getting paid. Ain't nobody living lavish in the city of Chicago while the South Side suffers and bleeds at the hands of the people we are forced to pay to protect us. So Rahm Emanuel was like, I need to calm black folks down and I need to sustain the system. So what does he do? You put a black person in a position of power that has the exact same agenda as a white person would have. That way, black people, we can look up at the top of the hill and see a black person, black face in high place. And then, and we're like, okay, let's all go home. Protest, riot, uprising, over. We got a black man in the top cop position. But Rahm knew that, hey, Eddie Johnson is an Oreo cookie. That's what we used to call you. Black on the outside, white on the inside. So Eddie Johnson said, I love the police. I'm the police. And the police, we're going to continue with business as usual. And you black folks better recognize. But anyway, Eddie Johnson, that was under the Rahm administration. And then here come old Lori Lightfoot. And I think Lori Lightfoot is a smart and shrewd woman. And people play with her because she looked like a hobbit. Her lineup ain't together. Her slacks gum up around her ankles. She don't get her pants tailored. So, she walks into the room. She low-key, people kind of discount her. But she's cold-blooded. I ain't saying she pro-black. I ain't saying she represents the interests of the people. I mean, she's pretty much demonstrated that she doesn't. But one thing she has demonstrated that she is a shrewd and not a dumb woman and not to be trifled with. If you on the Lori Lightfoot payroll, clean up your act. For real. For real. Man, she's cold. Because Eddie Johnson was supposed to be leaving at the end of the month. He went and had a press conference where he announced his resignation. He's like, I'm out. I've served. I was happy for the honor to serve. And I think it is time I move on and spend more time with my family. The same thing all corrupt politicians say. And corrupt bureaucrats say when they just go too far over the cliff of corruption. I'm going home to spend time with my family. And he said, I'm out. Y'all take care. He was literally a lame duck police superintendent. He had no power, no influence. Donald Trump and Fox News was cussing him out. His own police officers were clowning him. He was under internal affairs investigations. He was just falling apart. And while this man was down and out and one of the most ineffective, irrelevant black politicians in this whole city, Lori was like, nah. Talk about kick somebody when they down. Talk about throw somebody under the bus. She put on some stiletto, steel toe, spiked boots and sprinkled hot peppers on them boots and kicked this man while he was down. She didn't just throw him under the bus. She drove the bus over and threw that bus in reverse and backed up, made it so this man is the laughing stock of the political arena, made it so that this man could not move on because generally what these pigs do is they go on to do security consulting and other lucrative jobs in the private sector coming off. This man is done. She wiped this dude. When you fire somebody who has already resigned, when you give that depth of a disrespect and a vote of no confidence, he's done. He's fried. He might even end up in jail because he's still under investigation. Him resigning and then getting fired. And literally, imagine going to work and say, I quit. And they were like, nah, you can't quit. You fired. You'd be like, if you quit, that's how much they hate you? Because if you quit, you don't get unemployment. But if you fired, you can at least try to apply. She was like, nah, step. He was supposed to be out of office in 3 weeks. And in those 3 weeks was basically time for him to settle his affairs. She didn't give him time. This dude is getting marched out of the precinct. And at the same time, boy, I'm telling you, sometimes, Tommy, and it didn't happen to a more worthy pig. It didn't happen to a more worthy sellout. That's what you get. I'm so happy this happened. That's what you get. And I hope all the rest of you Negroes in high places serving the interest of masses, loyally serving the interest of your people, working against the interest of your people. I let Eddie Johnson be a lesson to you. Let Eddie Johnson be a lesson to you. And then not only that, they released the Chicago Tribune was like, the night, because they found Eddie Johnson passed out in his car. And I'm telling you, the Chicago Police Department is full of wife beaters, drug addicts, and alcoholics and cheaters. Shoot. I already talked about why the police are so damn crazy, shooting them lead bullets day after day. But I digress. They then went and snitched on this man and talked about they got him on secret surveillance footage, cavorting with a woman that ain't even his wife and drinking up before he got in the... they just dragging this dude. That's what you get. That's what you get. Stop selling out. Stop cooning. Hell, you might have had less money, but man, you ain't even got your dignity. You ain't even got your self-respect. Enjoy that luxury SUV. You about to get your license suspended so you can sit in your luxury SUV in your driveway of your McMansion. I hope it was worth it. Maybe it was. Some people, their name don't mean nothing. It's all about material for them. Stand for something. Stand direct, stand for this. You fall for everything because you don't stand for ish, as Wise Intelligence said. But what's even worse, what y'all looking over? Because everybody's like, wow, this is cold-blooded. Lori Lightfoot is cold-blooded. She's cold. Man, y'all better stop making fun of them outfits. Y'all better stop making fun of that dusty afro on her head. Y'all better stop it. I'm stopping. That's it. I'm done. I ain't messing with Lori. Lori is cold. And then they said there's at least 20 more top cop, police administrative captains that are on the chopping block. If there's something happened to Bro Diallo, y'all check Lori Lightfoot's trunk. She don't play. That woman's cold. You can't say nothing else about her. That is a shrewd politician. That is a shrewd sister. Woo. Anyway, but here's worse. Now I have to talk about Lori Lightfoot for a second. I'm glad she got rid of Eddie Johnson. But I can predict in the next 6 months to a year, we're going to be missing Eddie Johnson because the cracker that she's put in his place is absolutely the absolute worst person to come. I'm telling you, Eddie Johnson was bad, but the person they put in place is going to make Eddie Johnson look like Malcolm X. She just hired as the interim superintendent of the Chicago Police Department a man by the name of Charles Beck. And if your last name is Beck, you're a racist. Come on now. What more evidence? How much more evidence do the citizens need? Let's go. Okay. So Charles Beck, who is he? He comes out of the LAPD. And the LAPD makes the Chicago Police Department look like the Black Panther Party. The Chicago Police Department, the LAPD department is the police department that gave us our first SWAT team, Special Weapons and Tactics, militarization of the freaking police force started in the LAPD. A man by the name of Daryl Gates. Go look up Daryl Gates in relationship to the Rodney King riot. One of the most, he is the living embodiment of the patron saint of racist cops, Daryl Gates. And this new police, this Beck guy worked directly up under him, was trained and mentored by Daryl Gates. And he used to be a crash officer. And I remember the crash officers and how that spread during the 80s and 90s. Remember when police were driving these tanks? And on the barrel of the tank gun, they put this flat steel plate and they drive into people's houses to serve drug arrest, nonviolent drug offenders. We own the night. That's the crash officers. Crash stands for Community Resource Against Street Hoodlums. Your damn police department name calling the citizens. And he was a crash officer. A Nazi, a stormtrooper, militarized police. And this is who Lori is bringing to head up the Chicago Police Department. She throwing gas on fire, y'all. So yeah, as we celebrate the departure, get your protest signs ready. Get your marching, shine up your marching boots. Because she's basically signaling, just like Giuliani did when he took over from Deacons. I'm taking the gloves off. I'm taking the leash. We're going to kick some ass. The cops are about to be unleashed. And yes, I know some of y'all who live on the South Side, especially in Chicago, are like, what do you mean the cops are about to be unleashed? Yes, I know it sounds absurd. But they about to go from 10 to 25 on us. Be prepared. Be aware. I mean, that is this, but that's, I mean, it's a slap in the face. I mean, really, all jokes aside, for her to bring this Charles Beck guy to the city of Chicago is an absolute slap in the face. This man is wholly unqualified. His professional history, I don't know nothing about his personal history, but his professional history would unqualify this man from being over a predominantly black community. I mean, he came out from under Daryl Gates. May he rest in hell. I mean, what? But there it is, y'all. Like I told y'all, this is something we're going to be watching. And the white cops understand Lori is giving them a signal by bringing this guy to, because he's just one man. He's going to be sitting up in an air-conditioned office the whole time he's here. So his appointment is more of a signal to the cops to say, hey, get her done. And by getting it done means advance the gentrification. Right now, the city of Chicago is under an ethnic cleansing campaign. They want to drive the black people out because if you even go to some of the worst hoods and look at the infrastructure, don't look at the blight and the drugs and the misery and the prostitutes and the hustlers and the gangs. Look at the infrastructure. It's some of the most valuable infrastructure in the world. And they're going to retake it, invest in it, build it up, and kick us out and drive us out. And they also want to not only take the property, they also want to dilute black political influence. Black people are too concentrated. And when you have a concentrated area of black voters, you have a political dynasty, really. And as ineffective as the black politicians are, it's still a locked-in black vote. And if that black community ever gets organized, ever gets any semblance of political consciousness, it's over. We could retake this city because of the level of concentrated black votes. Because the white vote in this city is split Republican, Democrat. But the reason why this is such a strong Democratic city is because all the blacks go Democrat. So in the next few years, you're going to see a small emergence of Republican and more white neoliberal Democrats come in the office because they're diluting and dispersing the black vote. So it's all an agenda. But we don't look past next week. These people are looking into the next 50 years. And so I believe that Charles Beck is coming here to enact and enhance the ethnic cleansing of the city of Chicago. And I believe that Eddie Johnson's on the outs because he was, even though he wanted to carry that out, he was enthusiastic about carrying out white folks' agenda, he was incompetent in doing it. They were like, we appreciate how much you love us, Eddie, how much you want to serve us, Eddie, but you weak booty. You ain't doing it right. It's too slow. And talking about ethnic cleansing, let's talk about the topic. Trumptopia. Trumplandia. No, it's called Trumplandia. Donald Trump released a tweet about a civil war. It was a retweet or a quote. And everybody's up in arms that saying that it is irresponsible for sitting U.S. president to threaten or to speak of civil war. And they're actually making this assertion by Trump part of his impeachment campaign. So Donald Trump said, if the he quoted this guy named Robert Jeffries, evangelical dispensationalist pastor. He said, if the Democrats are successful in removing the president from office, which they never will be, it will be a cause for civil war-like fracture in this nation from which the country will never heal. And so then, if you go on the right-wing white tube, the white people, the white races have appropriated a term called electric boogaloo. And boogaloo or electric boogaloo is a code word for a white race war, a white uprising. And they call it Civil War II electric boogaloo. Because there in the 80s there was this movie called Breaking. And then there was Breaking 2 electric boogaloo. And so now there is a meme, and you can look up Civil War II electric boogaloo memes, where white nationalists, white racists, neo-Nazis, neo-fascists, alt-right white people are using the word boogaloo or electric boogaloo all over the internet as a code word for how they were organized an uprising in defense of Trump and in defense of, I don't know, their nation, their whiteness. And there are militias and groups such as the Proud Boys and what's the Oath Keepers and the weakened but not totally eliminated the growing militia movement throughout the country. If you read magazines like Guns and Ammo and other right-wing publication, NRA also has a magazine. And for some reason, these magazines are in my dentist's office. Maybe I should find another dentist, but my dentist is like an ecological, zero carbon footprint dentist, but they have all this right-wing literature in the reading room. I should inquire about that. But then I actually like reading that stuff and looking into that stuff, and I even take some of the magazines. So I'm in quite the quandary. It's weird. What do you want from me? I'm just in a weird space right now. Anyway, so these white boys are running around. You can find it on Reddit, on 4chan and 8chan, and all these right-wing white websites, and where the white nationalist internet trolls and Trump supporters and Christian evangelicals. They had this concept in what I call Trumplandia called Civil War II electric boogaloo. So whenever you find a white person talking about the boogaloo or electric boogaloo, they are literally talking about race war or a white uprising in America. But what they don't understand is that most of these white people calling for this are in no position to carry out a civil war. And there have been many attempts of white people on the left and right to provoke a civil war. But something you have to understand about the first Civil War. The Civil War wasn't Southern citizens fighting against Northern citizens. The Civil War in the United States was Northern elites, the Northern capitalist class, fighting against the Southern capitalist or mercantile class. The elites carry out civil wars. Yes, the working class and poor people fight and die in the wars. Or as Boots Riley put it best, he said, war isn't one land against the next, it's poor people giants, so the rich cash checks. So these working class, these poor redneck trailer trash honkies, and they call themselves that. You know, these proud Americans, NASCAR and wrestling watchers, don't understand that if they attempt to carry out electric boogaloo, Civil War II, without the full sanction of the capitalist class, they're going to be slaughtered. And all these black gun nuts, all these RBG, revolutionary but gangster dudes you see all over the internet flashing their guns, not that they were going to do so anyway, you can fall back. Because the BATF, the Bureau of Alcohol and Firearms and Tobacco, the FBI, the NSA, will wipe these rednecks off the face of the earth. Because that is not how civil wars work. Now, until Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and other elites, and I'm sorry to tell y'all, Trump is a performer. He's not a member of the elites. He is a tool, an instrument of the elites. But what you will have to have in order to have a civil war in America ain't got nothing to do with black folks. The first Civil War didn't. I know they said they went to war for slavery, and slavery was the reason, but it wasn't to liberate black folks. It was to reform and modernize the slave system. The Southern agriculturalists wanted agrarian chattel slavery. The northern industrialists wanted modernized industrial wage slavery. They both wanted to sustain a system of exploitation of labor of the poor and working class people. They just had different methodologies for doing it. But it had nothing to do with the satisfaction or discontentment of the enslaved Africans or the poor white and working class white people. They had nothing to do with it. All they do is get marching orders. That is not how civil war works. People have been talking about a new civil war since Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. The reason they assassinated Abraham Lincoln is because they thought that with the death of Lincoln, that will cause the recently defeated Confederate States to revive their warfare. But what the people who killed Lincoln didn't know is that the Southern agrarian class had already had an understanding that they were going to be able to re-enslave African people under a system of wage and debt slavery. So the gentile slavery system in the Southern and Dixieland and the antebellum South was sustained all the way up to the 1960s, where black people whose ancestors worked the land in chains, their descendants worked the land in debt. And until agriculture was subsidized and modernized by government grants under the Nixon administration, that's when black people got freed from the land. We didn't get freed by northern troops. We got reformed. So all I'm telling is that these white people that have this fantasy about race war and a new civil war, and I don't even know what you're fighting for, to keep America white or whatever, the demographics you're fighting for, your rights, and to stop gays from using the wrong bathroom, and to stop women from aborting their fetuses, all this nonsense. I'm telling you, if you're a white nationalist and you want a civil war, you have to find out a rift between two entrenched power structures. Maybe if you can have the fossil fuel industry to go up against the new tech billionaires, if they started beefing head on, then you could have a civil war. Civil war has nothing to do with pride and country and love of patriotism. It has nothing to do with that. Wars are fought for resources. And if you're poor or you're a working class or a middle class white consumer, if you're watching and going to Walmart, you don't have the power to evoke a civil war. You can go on a shooting spree, which I'll go on shooting sprees all the time. Remember, Dylann Roof walked into that black church and shot non-black people in order to spark a race war. Even John Brown, bless his heart, when it raided Harper's Ferries because he wanted to start a slave uprising. In an institution and system such as this, in order to evoke a civil war, you have to have one of two things. Number one, you have to have two entrenched capitalist factions that want to bang on each other. That doesn't exist right now. They have their differences, but they're able to settle their differences in court. They're able to settle their differences fighting proxy wars overseas. Another thing is an absolute economic collapse, which we're not in the midst of right now. And I know you think you being broke, but the thing is, the poverty of the people, capitalism is doing quite well right now and is relatively stable. And I know it's not justified, and I know it shouldn't be, but it is. Those are the facts. I wish I could say otherwise. Even though it's a house of cards, it's a very stable house of cards. And they have several fixes and stopgaps within this system to prevent collapse. And yes, they can have recessions, but even Trump is quoted saying he loves economic downturns and recessions, because recessions means the poor and working class people have to settle for less, but the rich people get to buy up stuff at devalue. Even now in Brexit, because the European, the Brits or the UK decided to leave the European Union, which is causing it to have to devalue its currency and causing all sorts of economic disruption for the people and the students and the youth of the UK. The investor class are there gobbling everything up. Same thing with the collapse of the Soviet Union. The oligarchs gobble everything up. So collapse, you have two types of collapse. You have economic collapse, which generally affects the poor and working class. And then you have institutional collapse, where people lose absolute respect and control of institutions. And that second form of collapse is what you're going to have. But even in those conditions, people don't tend to engage in war. What they tend to do is turtle. They create these little enclaves and fortresses and defend these enclaves and fortresses. They don't tend to mobilize whole war to take over the government because the government doesn't exist anymore. They start to form new, city states. And generally what would happen in that situation is that a foreign power will come in, a foreign state will come in and impose. Or there's another way you can have civil war if the U.S. is invaded by, say, the UN or China, which, there's a movie called Red Dawn, and I think they made an updated version where Cuba and China united. But that's so damn unlikely, but it could happen. It deserves to happen. I mean, no country deserves to be invaded more than the United States. So there are none of the scenarios in which these white folks can get their Civil War to electric boogaloo. None of the scenarios exist currently. So these white people are suffering. They've got their opioid addiction. They're losing their status. And to them, suffering means I cannot lord over other people. White boys are like, the women's rights movement and the black rights movement and the gay rights movement and the immigrants' rights movement and these damn refugees. White people are like, what is freedom to me? My freedom to me is not just being able to live a life of comfort and consumption and leisure and worship my God without being molested and listen to my sucky music in the comfort of my home. Freedom to them is being able to step on our necks. Is to be able to go around saying nigger and go around saying wench and go around treating people by subhuman means. And if you say, well, hey, white male, you can't go around treating other people as less than you. Oh, there's a crisis in America. What happened? I want my country back. And I know, hey, get mad at me for saying it. Be mad at yourself for doing it. So anyway, white people are under this delusion that their freedom is being threatened and that their freedom is being taken away from them by people who have no power to impact their freedom positively or negatively. And you will not find these right-wing nuts talking about civil war. And I say, all the problems that white people have that are talking about engaging in Civil War II, electric boogaloo, all these white people, your problem, it can be solved by class warfare. If white people developed a class analysis and engaged in class conflict and class warfare, all of their problems would miraculously be solved. And that is why the white right-wing media and mass white manipulation is pushing them towards race war and civil war to prevent them from looking at class war and developing a class analysis. And like to say, the reason you're not a billionaire is not because of this corrupt system. Favors the people who are already rich against the interests of the people who are poor and working class. It is because black people are buying Cadillacs with food stamps in the ghetto and refuse to work. And because immigrants are coming here raping your beautiful blonde white women and creating a race of mongoloids. This is what they say. Again, I quoting white nationalists. So you also have many black people who also spew this Civil War rhetoric. We're going to have a civil war. We're going to have this. I'm sorry, y'all. We don't have civil war. And I know civil war seems sexy. Lined up on the line of your side versus their side, and we're all on the battlefield and heroic, and we rip open our chest, and we got these big bulging muscles and abs, and we got the machine gun in one hand and the RBG flag on the other hand, and across the field you see the white boy with the AR-15 and the Confederate flag, and we're all so manly, all this muscle, all this glory. Sorry, y'all. It's not going to happen. You're more likely to be standing in a line waiting on your insulin, trying to figure out how you're going to pay for your insulin. That'll be your battle of your life. Really? I'm sorry. And I know I don't want to deny because they feel like men, we can't be men anymore. We have to sit in cubicles. We have to be politically correct. And so now we have these fantasies of war. Now you can enlist and you can go overseas and fight the war on terror and do mass slaughter for the empire. Those opportunities exist. But as far as some glorious transformative war in America, we're not there yet. And when we get there, I'll let you know. I'll be the first. You're going to hear it on the Bro Diallo show before you hear it anywhere. But the conditions do not exist. And so Trump talking about civil war, Trump's not going to get his civil war. Trump all his life has tried to enter the elite. Trump is not a member of the elite. He is the tool of the elite. And those are two different statuses. And usually black people, we're the ones that get confused about that. Oh, Jay-Z got a seat at the table. But they don't like Trump. They don't accept Trump. Trump is a clown. Trump is a useful idiot that they will slam dunk into the prison if need be. He's not a member of the elite, and that's what he doesn't understand. He is a Barnum and Bailey. He is a con man. He is a useful idiot to the true elites, and they're not going to risk a civil war and a disruption because the United States is still the banker and the police and the engine of the global capitalist economy. The moment that changes, you might have some other options, but that's the status quo. And the rich people want to preserve the status quo above all else, and they will kill, steal, or even reward and give charity to maintain the status quo. And a civil war is not in their economic interest in the United States. And the poor and working class white folks, if y'all do, y'all posse up. Y'all get in a huddle. You see what the FBI did to the Ku Klux Klan in the 70s. It wasn't because the United States stopped being racist. It's because these useful idiots no longer serve their interests. And I also have to tell black people on the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Chairman Fred Hampton and Mark Clark, COINTELPRO was not just for black people. Go back and look at everything from the SDS to the anarcho-syndicalist, study the labor history, study the anarcho-syndicalist movement and during the progressive era in the United States. You'll find that everything they did to us, they did to themselves. And so any of these white boys who want to talk about we're going to keep Trump in office by means of arms, you're playing yourself. And the first person to sell out you rednecks who want to carry out a Civil War II electric boogaloo, the first person that's going to go on Twitter and denounce you is Donald Trump. Y'all talking about you're going to shed your blood to keep Donald Trump in office. When you see that Donald Trump has had almost a dozen associates go to prison trying to stand up for him, to lie for him, and Trump is the most backstabbing. Trump has loyalty to no one. Name one person that Trump has shown loyalty to other than Trump. He's not even loyal to his first, second, or current wife or his children. He will throw you rednecks under the bus. But hey, what do I know? I've only got the bird's eye view. So that's the thing. And I see a lot of black in Trumplandia. White people are up in arms. And they want white people to keep attacking the scapegoats. And white people, there are some white people that are waking up. There are some white people that are waking up. But the problem is that when white people get woke, and white people all their lives think we have the power. I'm white in America. And they think that they have power. But they only have power to go along with the status quo. They have advantage within the status quo. But the one moment a white person says, hey, there's some viable alternatives here to ecological destruction. I want to be green and sustainable. I want to be more equitable in distribution of the wealth. They find out that they get treated just like niggas, essentially. You could be political prisonered. You can be assassinated. You can be demonized. You can be labeled a terrorist. Or an eco-terrorist. So white people, you only have power to the extent that you submit to power, which isn't real power either. The average white person has no power. They have a greater illusions and delusions of power than black people. Black people like, I can't win. But you see when white people want to go to the left or make some societal transformation that goes against their rulers, their owners, they get hemmed up by the cops and assassinated by the cops, just like us. And here's another thing. There is more opportunity, especially in the white arena, for civil reform than there is for militarist uprising. But the white masses are the most indoctrinated, poorly educated population. White people are well trained. They get coding and they get all these bumps in schooling or indoctrination. But in terms of critical thinking, and there are a lot of really good white critical thinkers that get no attention from white. If you're a true, honest white scholar, many white scholars have to go lecture in Bangladesh and go to Europe somewhere, go to Germany to do a lecture, and they don't even speak German because nobody listens to them in the United States. You know? But that's just not how it's playing out. We do need revolution. We do need to organize. But right now, armed insurrection, there's just the potential for success Forget success. You can't even get it started. You can't even fail at something you can't even start. So all that talk in Trumplandia about Civil War II and about uprising is nothing more than a mass delusion of white people. It's a wet dream. It's a racist wet dream. And I guess you, instead of in investing in your dental health, investing in upgrading your trailer, you just spent thousands of dollars on guns and ammunition, and you don't want to look like an idiot. So you have to keep telling yourself there's an oncoming war, there's an impending uprising, there's an impending new civil war on the horizon, so you don't look stupid sitting on top of all them guns. I understand. You want to feel like it's not just frivolous spending, that it's a wise investment. So people that buy guns always talk about there's a war going on. They want to be a prepper. And they used to call preppers survivalists. But then they saw people who weren't prepping, who weren't buying all this stuff, we were surviving too. Us non-survivalists were surviving just as well, if not better, than the survivalists. So it looked kind of stupid calling yourself a survivalist when people who aren't doing that same stuff you're doing are also thriving and surviving. So then they started saying they're preppers. Language, man. Anyway, Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio, AM 1680. Please, if you can. There's a list of things I have to ask y'all to do all the time. I don't know why I have. Subscribe to the YouTube, support Q4 Radio, subscribe and share the YouTube page, go to DialloKenyatta.com, support on Patreon, make a donation. Shout out to everyone that's been supporting, that allowed me to come here. Every show. Do I have to say that every show? Or can I just assume that's being done? Or I have to say this. Like, subscribe, click on notifications. It's a minor part of the job. What I'm complaining about. Anyway, support Q4 Radio. Support the Bro Diallo Show. Share. Get the word out. Let people know. Let's spread the word. Haven't you heard? And shout out to all the people in the front lines of the struggle. I am the people. As Chairman Ford Hampton taught me, I am the people. I'm not the pig. I am a revolutionary. And they can kill the revolutionary, but they can't kill revolution. But I also have to add, revolution is a scholarly, intellectual endeavor. If you're not engaged in critical thinking and critical and radical analysis, you're not engaged in revolution. I don't care how many guns you got, or how many guns you want to shoot, or how much you hate Whitey, you hate the man, you hate the pigs, you hate the fascists. That is wholly inadequate. Anyway, so let's share some short musical interlude and go into and share, for the time that we have left, my favorite, one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Fred Hampton documentary.
Don't want to be involved in this, man.
Also, well, on the, if you want to continue to listen, again, part of the show I broadcast on YouTube. But if you want to listen to the show in its entirety, if you're in Chicago, go to AM 1680. You can tune in on q4.org website. You can download the TuneIn app, iTunes Radio, and so there's several ways to listen. So if you want to get the entirety of the show, you have to listen on Q4 and the others. You only get a segment on the video feed, but you know that. So we will be on the air, but we won't be on YouTube the entire time. So that's that.
First, I want to do a little bit of background on the blues and say what it is. Like, there are 6 cardinal